The luminescent walls of Lecture Hall 7 pulsed with a distinctly nauseating shade of orange, the universal color of extreme danger warnings, which really should have been our first clue that today was going to be spectacularly terrible. Instructor Zektal oozed behind the crystalline podium, his gelatinous form quivering in what we cadets recognized as barely contained panic. When a Morphean starts vibrating at that frequency, you know something has gone horribly, catastrophically wrong. Attention, cadets. Zektal warbled, his translucent body now shifting to a concerning purple hue. I have an announcement from the Galactic Defense Academy Board of Directors. The room fell silent. Well, except for Cadet Thrix, whose respiratory vents were whistling, a sure sign of anxiety in his species. Poor guy had 3 hearts, and from the sound of it, all of them were trying to escape through his chest cavity. As part of our new educational exchange program, Zektal continued, pausing to emit what could only be described as a whimper, we will be hosting guest instructors from the Sol system. For precisely 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then Cadet Vela's eye stalks shot straight up, smacking the ceiling with an audible thwack. Sol system, she shrieked. You mean Earth, the Death World, the planet where the apex predators keep other apex predators as household companions? Now, Zektal wobbled frantically. Let's not panic. Too late. The lecture hall erupted into complete mayhem. Cadet Bronk from Sigma 5 started secreting defensive mucus at an alarming rate. The Etherian twins in the back row literally phased through their seats, and were now hovering near the ceiling, emitting high-pitched distress signals that made everyone's sensory organs ache. Humans? Someone screamed. They're sending humans here? The door to Lecture Hall 7 slid open with a cheerful chirp that felt wildly inappropriate, given our collective state of terror. In walked what could only be described as a bipedal nightmare wrapped in a deceptively simple blue uniform. Commander Jake Morrison, according to his chest badge, stood at what humans apparently considered average height, which meant he towered over half the class, like some sort of fleshy skyscraper with disturbingly flexible joints. But that wasn't the worst part. Oh no, the worst part was that he was eating something. Morning, folks. Morrison called out cheerfully, tossing another one of those beige death nuggets into his mouth. The crunch echoed through the hall like breaking bones. Sorry I'm late. Had to grab some peanuts from the vending machine. Anyone want some? Cadet Thrix made a sound like a deflating balloon and slid under his desk. The rest of us just stared in horrified fascination as this Deathworlder consumed what our xenobiology textbooks clearly labeled as toxic to 87% of known sapient species. Tough crowd. Morrison grinned, revealing those disturbing white calcium deposits humans called teeth. Teeth, for tearing flesh. And he was just displaying them, like it was normal. I felt my chromatophores shifting to camouflage mode, desperately trying to blend with my chair. Around me, similar defensive reactions rippled through the room. Cadet Bronk's mucus production had reached flood stage. The Etherian twins were now completely invisible, except for occasional whimpers. Someone in the back row had activated a personal force field, which was explicitly against Academy regulations, but honestly, who could blame them? So, Morrison clapped his hands together, a sound like thunder that made everyone jump. I'm here to teach you all about predator management techniques. Real practical stuff. The kind of things that'll save your life when you're facing down something with more teeth than brain cells. The silence that followed was broken only by the synchronized thud of 12 cadets fainting simultaneously. Their bodies hit the floor in perfect unison, like some sort of morbid percussion section. Morrison looked at the fallen students with what might have been concern on his disturbingly mobile face. Huh, is it something I said? Oh well, they'll wake up eventually. Now, who's ready to learn how to survive encounters with apex predators using nothing but aggressive posturing and household condiments? 3 more cadets joined the floor symphony. Right then, Morrison said, stepping over the unconscious bodies with disturbing nonchalance. First rule of predator management: sometimes the best weapon is pure, unfiltered audacity. We humans call it the bluff, Basically, you convince the predator that you're way more trouble than you're worth. Cadet Vela's eye stalk swiveled nervously. You mean you lie to the predator? Not exactly lying. Morrison scratched his head, a gesture that made several of us flinch because his fingers bent in too many places. More like aggressive marketing of yourself as a threat. Let me tell you about the time I went camping in Montana. Oh no, humans and their stories. This was going to be traumatic. So there I was, Morrison began, his eyes getting that distant look humans got when recalling near-death experiences they somehow found entertaining, middle of nowhere. Just finished cooking some beans over the campfire. You made fire? On purpose? Cadet Yurix interrupted, their feathers standing on end. Well, yeah. How else was I going to heat the beans? Anyway, I turn around, and there's this grizzly bear, beautiful creature, about 800 pounds of muscle, claws like kitchen knives, teeth that could punch through steel. 800 pounds. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Instructor Zektal had turned completely transparent, which meant he was either dead or wishing he was. Now, Morrison continued, completely oblivious to our collective horror, a grizzly can run 35 miles per hour. I can maybe manage 15 on a good day with a tailwind. So running? Not an option. Fighting? Well, I didn't fancy my chances in a boxing match with something that could literally remove my head with a casual swipe. So you died? Cadet Thrix asked hopefully from under his desk. Morrison laughed. Actually laughed. At the memory of facing a creature that could end him in seconds. Nah, I used the bluff, made myself big. He suddenly threw his arms wide, puffed out his chest, and stood on his toes. The transformation was immediate and alarming. Somehow, this average-sized Deathworlder seemed to double in size. Several cadets scrambled backward, desks screeching against the floor. See, you spread out, make noise, act like you're the biggest, baddest thing in the forest. Then, and this is crucial, you need the roar. The what now? I managed to squeak out. Morrison grinned. The roar, like this. What came out of his mouth next was not a sound that should exist. It started in his chest, a rumble that made the walls vibrate, then exploded into a bellowing primal scream that spoke directly to the part of every sapient being's brain that controlled the runaway very fast reflex. It was rage and hunger and million years of evolution declaring, I am the thing that eats the things that eat you. When the echoes finally died, 6 more cadets had joined the pile on the floor. The Etherian twins had phased completely through the ceiling and were presumably halfway to their home planet by now. And that, Morrison said, his voice returning to conversationally cheerful, is how you convince an 800-pound killing machine that maybe, just maybe, you're too crazy to mess with. The bear took one look at me doing my whole King Kong routine and decided to go eat berries instead. Cadet Vela, who had somehow remained conscious, raised a trembling eye stalk. Commander Morrison, I have a question. Shoot. Are all humans mentally ill? Is that why your species survived? You're all completely insane? Morrison tilted his head, genuinely confused. Mentally ill? What do you mean? This is basic wilderness survival. Every human child learns this stuff in scouts. Children. Zektal finally found his voice, though it came out as more of a strangled gurgle. You teach this to your offspring. Well, yeah. How else are they supposed to know what to do if they meet a bear, or a mountain lion, or a moose? Now those are genuinely terrifying. Moose don't care about your bluff. Moose don't care about anything. They're like 4-legged tanks with attitude problems. I made a mental note to add moose to my list of reasons to never ever visit Earth. The list was getting quite long. Morrison looked around at our terrified faces and shrugged. Next week, I'll teach you how to bluff against pack predators. That's when things get really interesting. You have to establish dominance over the alpha while maintaining eye contact with the betas. The rest of his words were drowned out by the sound of every remaining conscious student seriously reconsidering their career choices. All right, Everyone's still conscious. Gather round, Morrison said, pulling something from his utility belt that looked deceptively harmless. A small canister about the size of a Morphian's primary heart. Today's second lesson, chemical warfare. Specifically, how humans turn seasoning into self-defense. He held up the canister. This little beauty contains concentrated capsaicin. We call it pepper spray. Pepper? Cadet Urix chirped nervously. As in, the food additive? Exactly. Morrison beamed like he'd just announced universe peace. Same stuff we put on pizza. Just, concentrated about 2 million times. Humans figured out that if food could hurt us recreationally, imagine what it could do to predators. The medical officer, a 6-armed Pentarian named Dr. Krell, leaned forward despite himself. You weaponized your food seasonings. Oh, it gets better, Morrison chuckled. Let me tell you about the time I used hot sauce to deter a mountain lion. Of course there was a story. There was always a story with humans. So I'm hiking in Colorado, he began, and already we knew this would end badly for our collective sanity. Beautiful day, birds singing, and then I notice I'm being stalked by a mountain lion. Gorgeous cat, about 150 pounds of pure predator. Only 150 pounds? Someone whispered. He calls that small. Now I didn't have my pepper spray that day. Rookie mistake. But I did have my emergency lunch kit, which included a bottle of Dave's Insanity sauce. That's about 300,000 Scoville units of pure pain. Cadet Vela raised an eye stalk. Wait, you carry pain-inducing chemicals as food? Morrison looked genuinely puzzled. Well, yeah. How else do you make a sandwich interesting? Anyway, I splash this stuff on a rock and toss it between me and the cat. The mountain lion takes one sniff, starts sneezing like crazy, eyes watering, and decides I'm clearly some kind of toxic waste dump with legs. Ran off faster than my ex after seeing my browser history. Humans consume chemical weapons, Dr. Krell muttered, making frantic notes. They consume chemical weapons for enjoyment. Speaking of which, Morrison continued, reaching into another pocket, we've also adapted natural deterrents. This here's synthetic skunk spray. Learned it from Earth's finest chemical warfare experts, skunks. Little black and white guys about this big, he gestured, but they can clear a square mile with their stench. We thought, hey, that's brilliant, and made our own version. The room's air filtration system kicked into overdrive, as if sensing impending doom. Then there's ammonia bombs, Morrison added casually. Tear gas, which we're about to demonstrate in that safety chamber over there. Oh, and my personal favorite, ghost pepper extract mixed with... Stop. Dr. Krell stood up, all 6 arms waving. You're telling me humans regularly consume things that cause physical pain, weaponize their condiments, and steal chemical warfare techniques from small Earth mammals? Pretty much, yeah. Want to know something really cool? We have competitions to see who can eat the spiciest food. We call them heat challenges. There's this one where... Dr. Krell's eyes rolled back, and he toppled backward with a crash that rattled the windows. His assistant rushed to his side. Is he okay? Morrison asked, concerned. He'll be fine, the assistant squeaked. He just needs to process the idea that humans have pain competitions for entertainment. Oh, that's nothing, Morrison waved dismissively. Wait till I tell you about the cinnamon challenge, or competitive nettle eating. Or, the time my buddy Steve made improvised tear gas from bathroom cleaner. Bathroom cleaner, Zektal's voice had reached a pitch only dogs and certain crystalline species could hear. You make weapons from cleaning supplies? Morrison shrugged. Everything's a weapon if you're creative enough. Hairspray and a lighter, flamethrower, bleach and ammonia. Chemical weapon though, don't actually mix those, you'll die. Aerosol deodorant, freeze ray if you hold it upside down. My grandmother once fought off a burglar with nothing but denture cleaner and a very aggressive attitude. He walked over to the safety chamber, a sealed transparent box with its own ventilation system. Now who wants to see what tear gas does? Don't worry, I'll be in there with you to demonstrate. I've built up a tolerance over the years. Helps that I eat a lot of Thai food. The entire class took 3 synchronized steps backward. No volunteers? Really? It's perfectly safe. Well, I mean, you'll feel like your eyes are melting, and you might experience temporary blindness, uncontrollable crying, and the sensation that your respiratory system is staging a revolt against your body. But other than that, 4 more cadets fainted. At this rate, we'd need to install padding on the floors. Morrison sighed. Fine. I'll demonstrate solo. But you're missing out on valuable life experience. Nothing builds character quite like being pepper sprayed at a barbecue because your cousin thought it would be funny. Now for my favorite lesson, Morrison announced, dumping a bag of seemingly random objects onto the demonstration table. The tool user's advantage. Or, as I like to call it, everything is a weapon if you throw it hard enough. The pile contained what looked like human household items. A shoe, an umbrella, a hardbound book, a metal water bottle, and inexplicably a rubber duck. Humans, he began, picking up the shoe, evolved as persistence hunters, but more importantly, we evolved as throwers. We're the only species on Earth that can accurately nail a target with a projectile at distance. Watch this. He set up training dummies at various distances across the lecture hall. Then, casually, without even looking particularly hard, he hurled the shoe at the furthest dummy. It struck dead center with a thwack that made everyone jump. That's 40 feet, he said proudly. Now watch this. He tied his academy-issued blindfold around his eyes, picked up the water bottle, spun around 3 times, and launched it. Bang! Another direct hit. Cadet Thrix's respiratory vents were working overtime. How is that possible? 2 million years of evolution, baby. Morrison pulled off the blindfold. Our ancestors figured out that the best predator is the one who never gets close to the prey, or in our case, the one who can brain a saber-toothed tiger with a rock from safe distance. You mentioned your grandmother earlier. Sektal warbled nervously. Something about denture cleaner. Oh, that was Grammy Morrison's minor league stuff. Morrison grinned. Let me tell you about the time she fought off 3 wolves with nothing but a rolling pin. The collective groan from the class was audible. Winter of '89, Minnesota. Grammy's out getting firewood, when 3 timber wolves decide she looks like Meals on Wheels. Now, Grammy was 83 at the time, about 5 feet tall, weighed maybe 90 pounds soaking wet. But she had a marble rolling pin and anger management issues. He picked up a metal rod from the table, demonstrating a swinging motion that made everyone lean back. First wolf comes at her, she cracks it across the snout like she's making pie crust. Second wolf tries to flank her, takes a rolling pin to the ribs. Third wolf, the smart one, is reconsidering his life choices. Grammy winds up like she's at the World Series, launches that rolling pin like a tomahawk missile, catches the wolf right between the eyes. All 3 wolves decide maybe they'll try being vegetarians. She threw it. Vela's eye stalks were tied in a knot. An elderly human female defeated 3 apex predators with a cooking utensil. Well, yeah. Grammy didn't mess around. She grew up during the Depression. You know what humans did for fun during economic collapse? They invented new ways to hit things with other things. Morrison pulled out his communication device and projected a hologram. Speaking of which, let me show you how we train our young. The video showed a group of small humans, children, our xenobiology classes had called them, running around a grassy field. They were laughing, screaming, chasing each other. This is called tag, Morrison explained. Looks innocent, right? We watched as one child pursued another, reaching out to touch them before spinning away to flee from a different pursuer. The patterns of movement, the sudden direction changes, the way they used obstacles. By the void, Cadet, Urix breathed. It's hunting practice. They're teaching pack hunting strategies to their offspring. Exactly. Morrison beamed like a proud parent. And that's just the beginning. Baseball, learning to hit fast-moving objects with precision. Dodgeball, target acquisition while under fire. Football, coordinated assault tactics with territorial objectives. Hide and seek, stealth and tracking skills. He switched to another video. This is Capture the Flag. 2 teams defended territories, infiltration objectives. Military training, Zektal interrupted, his gelatinous form quivering. You're teaching military tactics to juveniles. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds sinister. Morrison laughed. We just call it gym class. Don't even get me started on what we do with laser tag. Give human kids simulated weapons and watch them naturally develop small unit tactics that military strategists spend years teaching. The horror in the room was palpable. Several cadets were taking notes with trembling appendages, probably for their eventual psychological trauma reports. But here's the really fun part, Morrison continued, picking up the rubber duck. Humans can weaponize anything. This looks harmless, right? Before anyone could answer, he'd somehow turned the duck into a projectile that knocked over 3 targets in sequence. It bounced between them like some sort of rubberized guided missile. The point is, he said, retrieving his duck, humans don't need claws or fangs or acid spit. We've got opposable thumbs and really good hand-eye coordination. Everything else is just details. Your entire civilization, Dr. Krell's assistant spoke up, is based on throwing things at problems until they go away. Morrison considered this. I mean, when you say it like that, yes, pretty much. If throwing doesn't work, we throw harder or find a bigger thing to throw. It's gotten us this far. All right, time for practical application, Morrison announced, pressing buttons on the control panel with concerning enthusiasm. I've programmed the holographic training room with a simple Earth predator, nothing too scary. Just want to see you folks apply what you've learned. The lights dimmed. The holographic projectors hummed to life. For a moment, nothing happened. Then in the center of the room, pixels coalesced into something that would haunt my nightmares for cycles to come. It was maybe 3 feet long, black and white striped, with beady eyes that held nothing but pure, concentrated malice. It stood there, looking around with what I can only describe as disappointed rage, like the universe itself had personally offended it. What is that abomination? Cadet Bronk shrieked, his mucus production achieving fire hose pressure. Oh, that's just a honey badger, Morrison said casually. Figured we'd start small. Small. He called that thing small. The holographic honey badger snarled, revealing teeth that seemed specifically designed by some vengeful god to inflict maximum psychological trauma. Every single cadet in the room froze. Not the kind of freeze where you're thinking about your next move, the kind where your brain simply refuses to process the horror before you and decides maybe consciousness is overrated. Come on, folks, Morrison encouraged. Remember the bluff technique. Make yourself big. Cadet Vela tried. She really did. She raised her tentacles high, spread her eye stalks wide, and attempted something like a roar. It came out more like a whimper, having an anxiety attack. The honey badger tilted its head, seemingly offended by the pathetic display. It took 1 step forward. The entire class took 5 steps back. Oh, for crying out loud, Morrison sighed. He grabbed a folding chair from the corner. Why there was a folding chair in a holographic training room, I'll never know, and strode toward the beast. Oh, he shouted at the hologram. You want some of this, you oversized ferret with anger issues? Yeah, I'm talking to you, you stripy little rage nugget. Then he did something that defied all reason. He charged at it, with a chair, while calling it names that would make a Regillian pirate blush. The holographic honey badger, programmed with Earth-accurate behavioral patterns, actually backed up. Morrison brought the chair down in a wrestling move that looked rehearsed, then pointed at the creature like he was scolding a misbehaving pet. That's right. You think about what you've done. Now git. Go on. Shoo. The simulation ended. Morrison turned back to us, chair still in hand, looking confused by our expressions of absolute terror. What? It's just a honey badger. They're actually pretty small by Earth standards. Now, if I'd programmed a cassowary, that would have been mean. Those things are basically dinosaurs that refuse to go extinct. 6 feet tall, razor claws, can disembowel you with a single kick. Commander Morrison, Zektal interrupted, his form now a color I'd never seen before, somewhere between nauseated purple and existential crisis green. Are you telling us that this honey badger is considered a minor threat on your planet? Oh yeah, wait till you hear about Australia. The room went silent. We'd heard rumors about Australia, the continent that even other humans approached with caution. Australia, Morrison continued, warming to his topic, is where Earth keeps all its practice runs for designing predators. Everything there is venomous, aggressive, or both. Spiders the size of dinner plates. Jellyfish that can kill you in 3 minutes. Crocodiles that have remained unchanged for millions of years because they're already perfect killing machines. Even the plants are trying to murder you. They have a tree called the Gimpy that causes pain so severe, people have allegedly unalived themselves rather than endure it. And humans live there? I managed to ask. Voluntarily. Oh yeah, about 26 million of them. They even go swimming in the ocean, which has sharks, stonefish, blue-ringed octopuses, and sea snakes. For fun. Cadet Yerix fainted. Nobody bothered to check on him anymore. We were running out of floor space for unconscious bodies. The really wild part, Morrison added, setting down his chair. Humans keep predators as pets. I've got a dog back home, descended from wolves, literally sleeps on my bed. You keep a wolf in your dwelling? On purpose? Dr. Krell's assistant looked ready to call the Galactic Mental Health Advisory Board. Well, it's domesticated now. Mostly. Still has all the hunting instincts though. Great alarm system. And cats. Cats are basically miniature tigers that we feed and cuddle. They even do that thing where they bring us dead animals as gifts. It's adorable. The diplomatic implications hit everyone at once. Humans didn't just survive among predators. They didn't just fight predators. They kept them as companions. For emotional support. I need to make a call, Sekatol announced, oozing toward the door. The Galactic Council needs to update Earth's threat classification. Again. Instructor Zektol, having returned from what I can only assume was a very distressing communication with the Galactic Council, oozed back to the podium. His color had stabilized to merely deeply concerned rather than imminent nervous breakdown, which was progress. Commander Morrison, he began carefully. I have a question that's been bothering me since this educational experience began. Shoot, Morrison replied, and half the class flinched at the violent idiom. If humans are, as our xenobiology texts indicate, the apex predators of Earth, why do you need all these techniques? Shouldn't other creatures be learning how to defend against you? Morrison's face lit up with what humans called a smile but what looked to us like a threat display. Oh, that's the best part. We don't actually need most of these techniques anymore. We do it for fun. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear my own internal organs reconsidering their career choices. Fun, Zektal repeated flatly. You engage in potentially lethal encounters with deadly predators for entertainment. Well yeah, we call it adventure sports. Rock climbing without safety gear, swimming with sharks, running with bulls, base jumping, cave diving, weekend stuff. Cadet Thrix, who had finally emerged from under his desk, whimpered, weekend stuff, these are recreational activities. Absolutely. Humans get bored easily. Once we figured out how to be apex predators, we needed new challenges, so we invented ways to almost die for the adrenaline rush. There's this thing called bungee jumping, where we tie elastic cords to our ankles and leap off bridges. 3 more cadets hit the floor. We were going to need a bigger medical ward. But here's the real kicker, Morrison continued, pulling out a small container from his pocket. The most dangerous predator humans face isn't bears or sharks or even honey badgers, it's other humans. He opened the container, and immediately, several of our atmospheric sensors started screaming. A visible vapor rose from whatever hellish substance lay within. Ghost pepper chips, he announced cheerfully, popping one into his mouth. His eyes immediately started watering, his face turned red, and he was clearly in physical distress. See? We literally eat pain for fun. We challenge each other to endurance contests. We've weaponized our food, our sports, our entire existence, primarily to compete with other humans. You're saying, Sektor's voice had reached pitches that were making the windows vibrate, that humans are so bored with being the dominant species that you've turned survival into a game, deliberately seek out danger for entertainment, and your greatest threat is your own species' tendency toward recreational self-harm. Pretty much, Morrison wheezed, still eating the ghost peppers. Natural selection. Nah, we're into artificial selection now. Hey, anyone want to try one? They're really not that bad, once your nerve endings give up and accept their fate. As Morrison walked toward the door, still munching on what appeared to be concentrated suffering, leaving behind a classroom full of traumatized aliens and unconscious bodies, I had a profound realization. The universe's greatest mystery wasn't dark matter or the origin of life. It was how humans had survived long enough to achieve space travel when they seemed determined to find increasingly creative ways to challenge death to a fistfight. And they were teaching others their ways. We were doomed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 17 hours after Commander Morrison's teaching demonstration. The fact that it took that long was only because several council members needed medical attention after reviewing the classroom footage. Motion to establish a new mandatory course, wheezed Councillor Vrex, still recovering from what his physician called acute human-induced existential crisis. Understanding human insanity, a survival guide. All cadets must complete it before any potential Earth contact. Seconded, shouted someone from the back. And maybe include therapy sessions. The vote was unanimous. Even the warrior princes of Ragnar 7 who prided themselves on fearlessness voted yes, twice, just to be sure. Next order of business, the council chair announced. All 7 of its appendages trembling slightly. Earth's threat classification. Current level 8 seems inadequate, suggested the representative from the peaceful collective of Harmony. Considering they weaponize condiments and keep predators as emotional support animals. Level 10, someone proposed. They teach their offspring military tactics disguised as games, another reminded them. Level 11, they jump off functional bridges with elastic cords for fun. After 3 hours of increasingly horrifying revelations from Morrison's lesson, the vote was cast. Earth became the first planet in Galactic Council history to receive a warning level 12, approach only if absolutely necessary, and even then, maybe don't. The next day, the Academy's exchange program received 37 transfer requests. Every single one specifically stated, anywhere but Earth in the preferred destination box. One enterprising cadet from the methane swamps of Glorb actually wrote, I would rather intern on the surface of a star than visit a planet where people eat pain for entertainment and call it spicy food. Instructor Sektor, now permanently a shade of traumatized purple, added a note to Morrison's teaching evaluation. Effective educator. Students will never forget lessons, mainly due to psychological scarring. Do not invite back unless we want to explain to parents why their offspring require therapy. Meanwhile, Commander Morrison was already planning next week's lesson on Australian wildlife. Everything that won't kill you is probably just sleeping. The Academy's insurance premiums tripled overnight.